so hi, I'm Emma. I'm with Duke iGEM, and I'm here with Azim, also from Duke iGEM. How are you doing today?
Doing great.
Awesome. So we're interviewing all of the members of the team, as you know. And so this is your interview, and one of the questions that I've asked everybody else is, if you could go back and tell yourself some piece of advice from when you were first starting out in science, what would you tell yourself?
I think it would be a combination of know your limits, I think, and know what you're going to do. Because I went into my first research experience thinking that I was going to get a Nobel Prize for doing something that's so minuscule. And when you're doing something that's so seemingly meaningless, also being aware of how much you'll fail and how you have to be comfortable failing. Because I feel like I was really bad. I still am not as great failing every day, but I think it's a good thing I would tell myself is just to be like, understand that you're going to fail all the time and learn from these things. And these are successes even if they turn out badly.
Awesome. So what do you do these days?
These days and just in general?
In science, in iGEM, in all of it. Because you work in another lab, right?
Yeah, I work in chem lab. We work with prostate cancer, a specific type of prostate cancer. And I make really cool peptides and receptor targeting groups, which should kill cells as prodrugs. So that's a huge component. We work with metals and copper and do cool stuff with that. I work on the iGEM team. I did a lot of the modeling this summer. And I also tutor a lot for chem, do a lot with chem, tutor like 3 classes. So it's a lot of science stuff. Outside of science, I like to go work out every morning, which is a little thing, but I like to think that's a big part of my day, just waking up early to do something I would never did last semester, and just hang out with friends. I think that can sum up my life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So that brings us to a really good point of how do you balance, you talked a little bit about failure, and then you talked about this balance that you have between your science life and then everything else. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm personally a big fan of going home on the weekends, but how hard is it to maintain that balance, to not get sucked into the failure and to kind of maintain that you are a human as well as a scientist?
So I think what I learned really early on freshman year, especially with I started my research project in my other lab second week of school. So what I realized is Sunday is the day where you plan everything and do all your homework for the entire week. So it sounds, I guess, really bizarre to a lot of people, but I am not a procrastinator in any sense. I like to finish everything really early and make sure like I have a calendar for everything, and things normally switch and I usually overbook myself, but I think if I do that, I have a lot of time for like mental health breaks, a lot of time for just going out with friends, and my weekends are usually booked except for Sunday night, but in that night I'm just like doing all my work. And I think you have to really like plan ahead to do stuff if you want to have a really fun time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so you're in your second year here at Duke, but do you have any future plans?
I want to continue in science. I want to get a PhD or an MD PhD in chem, biochem, chemical biology, one of the nexus of those few things. And I want to continue working in a lab. I think it's really cool how we solve problems, how we can attack things, and really, I guess the failure is great because it makes the successes really, really good. Like I really enjoy when I can synthesize a molecule, or I can work with someone else and do something and get someone else's like wisdom on something, and just all the little things like coming up to huge big things. When you get that success, I'm like, yes. And that's why I really want to do something in science, and something in a science that I find really, really interesting.
Awesome. So why do you like science so much, besides like the yes feeling? Because obviously that wasn't happening when you were first starting out in your scientific endeavors. So what led you to finding that yes feeling? What led you to wanting to go after a PhD?
I think I really enjoyed early on in my like AP chemistry class. Like I took a chemistry class in 10th grade, just a regular chem, and it was okay. I didn't really care that much about it. But then when I took AP chemistry, I really just learned a lot. Like at the end of it, I asked to be like my teacher at the time was like, hey, you really like chemistry, you should work in a lab. And I worked in a lab for a little bit. I was ending up like tutoring a bunch of my friends. I just really, really enjoyed chemistry and everything about it. I think just taking the class and like really being like, wow, we can do so many cool things with so many different metals, elements, and everything. I know it sounds really cheesy, and it definitely isn't as like happy and I guess carefree that I make it, but I really just enjoy that science a lot. And certainly I'm gonna have to do other things as well, but I really enjoy what, like, you can make anything out of anything, and it's pretty badass.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. A fun question. If you could talk to any piece of lab equipment that we have, chemistry, biology, anything, what would you talk to and what would you ask it?
I would say some really, I don't know if I'd ask it a lot of things, but I would say some really mean things, some really hurtful things to the mass spectrometer.
Fair.
It's never right, and it always pisses me off. Even today, I was there 4 times for 5 minutes each, and it's just every day. It's just not a good thing. I would ask it, why do you not understand that what I'm doing should be right? I do 2 things that are elementary chemistry. You should really let me go. I mean, just give me a break this one time. And I don't know, it really sucks. I don't know. This is an interview. It's supposed to be peaceful. All the viewers.
Part of science, and part of this channel is to explore. How do you deal with being told wrong? I remember I was talking to somebody today about a systematic contamination issue that we had last year, where all of our cells were red.
Yeah.
For some ungodly reason.
I've seen that too, yeah.
So how do you deal with that failure? What's the best way for you to deal with the mass spec other than saying really hurtful things?
So I feel like whenever, it's one thing that for someone else to tell you you're wrong, because they could be wrong, and you always think that you're right, but when a machine tells you you're wrong repeatedly, I think what you have to do is really look at why things don't work. And the way I kind of cope with it is just today, what I did after failing 4 times is I stopped what I was doing. I was like, I'm not going to work for another hour. I'm just going to read up and talk to my friends who are in the lab, talk to grad students. Why is this failing? And it turns out that the reason my mass spec wasn't working is because I messed up with the synthesis, and I should have had an extra amino acid or something that would make it whatever. But I think just actually looking at what you did and seeing the failures in your process, or not failures, but ways you can improve upon that. I think I know that this all sounds really cheesy, but that's literally what I did today. I talked to, I don't know, that's what happens.
That's what happens in science. Everybody says it, nobody believes it, but that's actually what we do on a daily basis. All right, well, do you have any parting words for us?
Enjoy your mass spectrometer runs. It'll be great.
All right, well, thank you, Azim. We enjoyed talking to you today. Bye, everybody.
See ya.